Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 229 of the Co-op Podcast. I'm your host, Richard Billy Jr., and today I'm joined by Mr. Gary A. Swaby. How's it going, Gary?
It's going good, man. I hope everyone had a nice Thanksgiving, and I hope all the gamers out there managed to get some good deals on Black Friday. I personally didn't, but I am happy to know that there wasn't any videos released of people beating each other up for Xboxes and stuff like that. So I guess the Black Friday craze is getting better now. People aren't beating each other up. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
That's good. And we will get into that later. But if there were any fights this Black Friday, I think it was over PlayStation 4, not Xbox. But as I said, we'll get into that later. We're also joined by Mr. Jake James Lugo. How's it going, Mr. Lugo?
I'm doing good. I had a lot of turkey. I had a lot of dessert over my Thanksgiving holiday. And for the record, there were some videos that did drop about people getting wild out during Black Friday. So nothing's changed. It's just a little bit, I guess, more covert since Gary didn't see it. It was passed around on Twitter. But either way, I had a good Thanksgiving. I had a lot of food. I did some gaming stuff. I did some work stuff. I'm ready to talk about what's been going on in the news.
Awesome. Sounds good. And we're joined by Miss Dana Abercrombie. How's it going, Dana?
Hello, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving or post-Thanksgiving.
Absolutely. Yes. So hope everyone also had a happy Thanksgiving. I think it was some people that thought, well, because it was an extended holiday weekend, we wasn't going to have a show. But no, we definitely try to have a show as often as possible and pretty much every week. So definitely look forward to that. So before we get into the news topics, we're going to let you all know what we have been playing. So Dana, how about you start us off and let us know what you've been playing?
Well, basically it's the same stuff. It's still Lego Marvel Superheroes 2. I've been playing some of that and, enjoying the world that is Mario Odyssey. It's been kind of a laid back week for me. Well, weekend, the little break that we had. So only those two so far. There will be more upcoming since, everything was purchased during Black Friday.
Oh, well, since you mentioned that, was there anything that you picked up during Black Friday?
Not me particular, but I know there are some gifts coming to me. So, yay. But back in the, I forgot, like maybe 5 years ago or so, there was Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions, which is one of my favorite Spider-Man games. But through a big miscommunication and several things happening, I lost my copy, and that copy is now returning home to me again. So that is something that I am definitely looking forward to seeing again. But all the other games, I'm going to just wait until a little bit later. Nothing really spectacular or special. I just got a whole bunch of older games.
That's cool. Awesome. Sounds good. Yes. Okay, Mr. Lugo, how about you let us know what you've been playing?
I've been going through a couple different things, some game stuff for review, which we'll probably have later this week, because we're getting close to PSX time, so we got to get a bunch of stuff done beforehand. But there'll be some stuff coming this week from me that I've been playing for review. Outside of that, because it's a holiday and I just want to chill out and just kind of like enjoy everything, I actually got a chance to get a copy of Breath of the Wild on Wii U and actually mess around with that. Even though it's not Nintendo Switch, it's still, from what a lot of people have told me, it's still essentially the same type of game, or at least the same game in essence, outside of a few visual changes. So I messed around a little bit with that. I'll probably have some impressions at some point, probably on the next episode that we do, or at least talk about it a little bit more. And I also went back and started playing a little bit more Street Fighter V. I went back, played some more Injustice 2, obviously some more Star Wars Battlefront, now that we have the review up on the website. If you guys haven't checked it out already, we talked a little bit about it prior in the last episode, but we have our full review of Star Wars Battlefront 2 up now, and I ended up giving the game in the 60s because I felt that was a fair score based on a couple different things we touched on, and just some of the different stuff I've been seeing online. It's been a little bit of a chore to play that game in multiplayer because of the whole disparage between the different skill levels and the star cards that people have. A lot of people have been really boosting up their weapons and their abilities and stuff with their different units. So the people that have been putting in a lot of time into it, as well as also the people that were with it since the pre-orders went out, clearly have a huge advantage, and I'm starting to see a lot of people drop off from it because of stuff like that. But that's what I've been up to lately. I've been also posting up a lot of other content on the website, including some other stuff we'll talk about a little bit later towards the end of the show.
Sounds good. And did you pick up any Black Friday deals?
For me personally, I didn't really go out shopping on Black Friday. I usually kind of stay mellow. I usually hang back and let everybody else beat each other up for sales. But besides that, I had a couple family members that actually went out, picked up a few little different things here and there, you know, to give as gifts and stuff. So for me personally, I didn't really do a lot of shopping.
It's awesome. Sounds good. So how about you, Gary? What have you been playing?
Just Overwatch. That's pretty much all I've been playing this week. I was looking for, you know, some good Black Friday deals, but I didn't see any significant ones. You know, in the UK, our deals are much different. And, you know, I hear that the American deals are way better on Black Friday because obviously it is an American thing. It's just something that, you know, kind of caught on here in the UK as well because retailers realized that they could, you know, make a lot more money by participating in Black Friday. But yeah, I was looking out for Assassin's Creed Origins, but they only kind of took a few pounds off of it. So I didn't bother biting the bullet yet because I have a feeling that it will get cheaper within the next couple of weeks. So I'm just going to wait for that, you know, before I purchase it. And, you know, Christmas is coming up. So instead of buying games on Black Friday, I just kind of bought gifts for people for Christmas and stuff. So yeah, that was pretty much my Black Friday. But yeah, only Overwatch this week, unfortunately. I did just install World of Final Fantasy for PC because that, you know, that's coming out on PC. And, you know, I'll probably be doing like a write-up just to, you know, just to talk about the differences and how it runs on PC and my experience with the game on PC, even though, I reviewed the game last year for the PS4. But yeah, that's something to look out for in the future. So that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Sounds good. And as for me, yeah, well, first and foremost, as far as Black Friday deals go, I didn't get anything for myself. My brother's birthday was yesterday, so I actually got him Assassin's Creed Origins on Xbox. I know that's a game that he was looking forward to playing, so he can start playing it this week. But no other deals for me. I mean, the one lesson I did learn from Black Friday is that next year, I think I will wait for Black Friday and purposely not buy a lot of games prior to that, because most of the games that I purchased, I haven't even played yet. And then we get to Black Friday and I discover that, oh man, now this game is 50% off, or maybe at some point, $25. So yeah, next year I will do better. I will avoid a lot of games throughout the year. Obviously, I'll still talk about some games because, we still have to cover a lot of games. But if I am not the one that's personally reviewing a game, I'll probably just hold off on it for a little bit of time until the price drop happens. Because yeah, there were a ton of deals this year, and I was very annoyed about that. But it's all good. It's all good. So, as for what I've been playing, I've been playing two games in particular. First and foremost, I have been playing Planet of the Apes: The Lost Frontier. I actually completed that, and I'm actually working on a review, which you will see on the site tomorrow. This game is pretty much an interactive fiction game. Think of it like a Telltale game, except for it's mainly just a lot of conversation dialogues you have to have. So, you'll have an option for a character to say something. You just move the analog stick in a certain direction as to what the answer is that you want to give, that type of stuff. They do have some action sequences where you can actually decide to do certain things in the game. But outside of that, it's not really like it's too much gameplay. It's more so like you're watching a film and making the decisions of what the characters are actually doing. But the game, essentially, it does take place prior to the last Planet of the Apes movie that came out this year. And it's just basically about another group of apes that they're looking for food during the wintertime. So they decide to descend upon a town where they see people are at. And of course, then you have this whole conflict between the apes and the humans that you have to deal with. And, there are some characters that do get killed. There are 3 different outcomes that you can have for the game, which is that there's a peaceful resolution between the apes and the humans. The humans win or the apes win. So I got to play it a couple times to see a couple of different outcomes, because the game is only about 3 hours long. It's not a long game at all. And I mean, the storytelling is good in the game for the most part. But yeah, the decisions you make are very impactful, definitely affect a lot of things, a lot of the relationships that you build up in the actual game. But overall, it's a good game. I mean, right now, it's only on PlayStation 4. It does have PlayLink support. I know I reviewed Hidden Agenda, which was another game that had PlayLink support. That pretty much means that you can just download the app on your mobile phone and play on your mobile phone if you don't want to use the controller. But overall, it's a good game. Right now, it's $20 on PS4. It is supposed to be coming to PC and Xbox, but they haven't given a release date for any of that information quite yet. But yeah, the game is fun. Definitely, if you want to try out something different, if you're a Planet of the Apes fan, maybe you will want to check it out. But again, it's a short game, so you may not want to spend $19.99 for it. You may just want to spend, a little bit less. So I'm pretty sure there will be some sales, maybe at the end of the year, or if not, definitely the beginning of next year. So stay tuned for that. One other game that I have been playing, and that is the Batman, The Enemy Within, Episode 3, A Fractured Mass. I will say this right now, I spoke about Episode 2 on this show not too long ago. In Episode 2, I wasn't really happy with it because they introduced a lot of the other characters in it. They didn't really spend a lot of time with them. A lot of them were underutilized. And I also saw that they basically was taking a lot of stuff that they did with the Guardians Telltale game and implementing the same stuff in this game, where you have to manage different relationships with different characters. So this episode, I have to say, it has to be, so far, in my opinion, one of the best episodes of the season, because they cleaned up a lot of stuff with the storyline. You had Catwoman, who is in this episode, and you have to deal with that situation. But you also have to deal with the fact that Bruce Wayne is still undercover and has to deal with the fact that he's trying not to reveal too much of himself to the bad guys. So I thought it was a very interesting episode. It tied up some of the loose ends from earlier in the episodes, made better use of a lot of the characters, and really tried to play with the dynamic to see just how far Bruce Wayne would go as far as doing bad things. So I'm looking forward to Episode 4 and 5, because I'm very curious to see how they conclude the season. But this episode definitely was the best episode that I've played so far this season. So I would say, if you are a Batman Telltale fan, obviously you can wait until all episodes are released and then play through. That may be a better experience. But it definitely is starting to get a lot better. The first episode was fantastic. Second episode, I don't know about that. But the third episode, definitely the best. So if you enjoyed the first season of Batman Telltale, you may definitely enjoy this one. You'll see a lot more villains that you care about, and you want to see how Telltale uses those villains. So definitely check it out when the price drop happens, if not sooner. But yeah, that's pretty much is all that I've been playing for this week, and all that we've been playing as a whole for this week. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into the main topics for this week. As you guys already know, Thanksgiving was on Thursday, and then Black Friday, Friday. There wasn't really too much news that happened those 2 days, so we don't really have too many topics to get into, but we definitely still need to talk about a couple of things. So first off, last week we spoke about Star Wars Battlefront 2 and the controversy with the loot boxes, so on and so forth. And pretty much this week, a lot of governments are starting to get involved in all of this, saying that the loot boxes are a form of gambling, and they're actually making different decisions based on how they want to treat these types of games moving forward. So we just wanted to have a discussion. First and foremost, I believe there was some more news that did come out recently. So Mr. Lugo, how about you let us know what some of the other news was that came out about this topic?
Well, not really much, Rich, but the main gist of it, without getting into too much of the crazy specifics, because it gets really deep with a lot of the political stuff that's going on with it. But basically, a couple countries, and I believe the state of Hawaii, has been trying to rule loot boxes as gambling towards children, and they're trying to kind of start putting, at least some sort of legislation or any sort of like meetings between Congress and other organizations about restricting loot boxes in games, or at least the practice of microtransactions in games. Now, again, without getting too crazy in the specifics of this could be a big deal, because if things do go through, especially in Europe, that means that Star Wars Battlefront 2 could get banned in those countries that they're actually discussing this. And that would be obviously a big deal, because that would be restrict the amount of sales that they're able to get from Star Wars Battlefront 2, as well as also here in the United States, in the state of Hawaii, if they were able to do that. That would cause a lot of problems. And that also sets a precedent for other game companies that have been kind of dipping their toes a little bit in microtransactions, or at least, trying to implement them into their games. This is a big deal, because if that ends up being the case, that means that going forward, maybe companies will think a second time about actually doing that for some of their games. And funny how this is all going down in the wake of what's been going on with Destiny recently. Destiny 2 actually had some problems involving their XP system, and the way that you gain experience in that game. And a lot of people have been saying, that kind of connects to the Eververse stuff and the microtransactions there for the cosmetic content, for your characters. There's a lot going on with microtransactions and loot boxes right now. It's a hot topic of debate, and it's causing a lot of rifts in a lot of different places. So we might actually see this start to change up real soon, leading into 2018. That might be, lead into like, after the new year, we might actually see some big things go down. But who knows at this point? Right now, everybody's really sensitive about it.
Yeah, I believe rightfully so. Definitely have a lot of concerns about what's going to happen moving forward. So, Gary, how about you share? What are some of your thoughts on how this may impact gaming for all of us moving forward?
Yeah, it's important to note, like, yeah, there are some countries who would probably, like ban the sale of those types of games, but another important point here is that it might simply just change. Like, if it's determined that this is gambling in a lot of countries, it might determine the ERSB rating for the game. So those games would automatically be labeled as adult only. And there's some retailers out there who don't even sell games that are about gambling, because it's against their policy. So if there's a game or some sort of virtual gambling experience, they won't they don't want to touch it. They don't want to sell those types of experiences. So if this stuff does go into play, then I think we're going to see loot boxes actually go away from games, because it's going to be too risky for the big publishers to, kind of fit their model around that, when it's going to have an impact on their sales, like JJ said. So yeah, this is a big deal. And, it's interesting that, all of this is being determined now after Star Wars. That just goes to show, it puts into perspective, like, just how much EA has messed up the game for everyone. Like, because for years this was happening. Like, this was happening on mobiles, like, mobile games and stuff on iPhone and Android. Like, this has been going on for years, and only now is, this being investigated to this level where, it might actually have some sort of regulation in place to govern it and stuff like that. So yeah, like EA, they really pushed this too far, and they did it with a title like Star Wars, where they would attract a mass audience and everything. So yeah, like, everyone, I'm sure there's a lot of studios and publishers out there looking at EA sideways right now, because they're just they're messing up the money right now with this whole fiasco. But yeah, I think we'll, if all of this does go into play, I think we're going to see a big change in the way online games are presented. And in the next topic we go to after this, I'll have more to say. But for now, I'll just leave it at EA messed up the game, and this is it's definitely a sensitive issue, because I can understand why they would want to label it gambling, because when you're trying to charge people money for an item that, you know, that's completely dependent on chance, that can be seen as a form of gambling, you know. And the thing is, gaming is something that's highly aimed at youthful people, you know, like teens and children and everything. And we've heard reports of people using, you know, kids using their parents' phones and, you know, racking up a huge bill for like $1,000 or something like that in microtransactions. So this is, you know, like you're getting people hooked on these experiences and you're forcing them into buying more and more, you know, virtual items, you know, that might not give them what they want. So it is a form of gambling if you really think about it. But it's just a shame that, you know, it took a manipulation of that system for, you know, these governments to start really looking into it.
Keep in mind, I think we should also note that the only reason why this is starting to become a really big deal, like Gary mentioned, is one, because of the Star Wars branding name, because everybody knows Star Wars and anything associated with it is going to get mainstream attention. We have places like the Wall Street Journal and I believe CNN and MSNBC covering this, as well as a bunch of other places on top of that, that really spread the word of mouth and also gave a really bad impression of everything that was going on. That's why we talked a little bit about the Disney CEO calling the EA CEO. And there, like some rumors of that conversation being had at one point because of the brand, as well as also just the optics of everything like that. But also keep in mind, the only reason why a lot of countries and a lot of politicians are jumping on this is like what Gary mentioned, is because of kids. And I think this hasn't just started with this stuff, you know, ever since the stuff from Shadow of War and now Star Wars Battlefront, and even you can argue to an extent Overwatch. I think this also goes back to some of the stuff that we saw from Team Martin and Pro Syndicate with the Counter-Strike gambling stuff. From a while back, if you guys remember that happened a while ago. I want to say maybe about a little over a year and change ago, give or take. But that, I feel like that's where a lot of this stuff really started at, because that was an instance where it was legit gambling with a lot of the digital goods involving Valve and a lot of stuff going on with Steam and Counter-Strike. So I think like if they really wanted to make a strong case and really kind of take a hard look at this and make the case that this is kind of gambling towards minors or gambling towards a younger demographic like that, that'd be the case really for them to make. And I feel like that's coming very soon. And I think this is only going to get a lot harsher and a lot worse as we get into 2018.
Very good points. Yeah, I agree. Dana, so do you have any thoughts on this ongoing controversy with the gambling and loot boxes?
It's about time. So I'm extremely happy for this. They needed to do something, because it was only a matter of time that a company would come and take advantage of this situation. It just so happened to be EA, and it just so happened to be at such a large scale. I think, as was previously said before, this is only starting to get attention because this is something that, you know, affects children. And I think that the government is starting to label this now within the same line as, you know, how they market. You can't market certain not cereal, but certain, you know, addictive children. And I think that this is going to fall into, you know, you can't market gambling to kids as well. So this is where all the controversy is really, you know, starting to take notice. So I'm looking forward to there being some type of regulation on this so that we can enjoy games without, you know, breaking the wallet. We already paid for the game, and then now we have to put out more money to basically be able to play the game. So I'm extremely happy for this. I hope they figure it out soon. And I wonder how this overall is going to impact Star Wars Battlefront 2, their sales. I wonder if this is going to be, you know, people are going to be so turned off by it that they won't, you know, go out there and make all the purchases, or if this is something that, oh, this game is so controversial, so let's buy it anyway. I wonder how it's going to have that impact, but I'm all for it. It's just a shame that it had to happen this way, but yay.
Absolutely. Okay, so I want to ask one last question before we move on to the next topic. So we spoke about, yeah, it definitely is bad that all this. Well, it is good that it does open people's eyes to the situation. But I want to ask this question because, you know, y'all mentioned Star Wars Battlefront 2. We mentioned Destiny 2. Yeah, a lot of these games, they have a little bit of a bad attention now. Well, Star Wars has the worst. But now I want to ask this question. how do you guys feel the response will be if Rockstar decides to do this with Red Dead Redemption 2 next year, where it comes out, microtransactions are in there? Do you think people are going to complain, or are they just going to still buy it because it's Rockstar?
They've been doing that with GTA 5 for a while. I mean, at that point, I think that audience and the people that care about this stuff, especially GTA Online, which in this case, I guess would be Red Dead Online, I don't think they're really going to care, because that's been something that's been going on. It hasn't been a problem for a long time. Now, keep in mind also, as much as the people complain about this, we've talked about this on the co-op before, people complain about this, but look at the numbers that these places are generating. Like, there were stats, I believe it was published by Activision, and I think also by Rockstar at one point, about how much money they've been making off of microtransactions. So for some companies, I feel like it's not going to affect too much. Maybe they'll be a little bit cautious in the way that they present it, because again, I feel like this is all an optics issue. This is all about the presentation of all this. And I feel like companies could still have this type of practice or have this type of setup and design implemented to their games, as long as it's not shown to the public and not shown to the consumer as being predatory. And I feel like maybe that's where EA got a little bit careless, where, putting it out there, especially in the wake of what happened with Shadow of War and a couple of the other games that came out earlier this year, that ended up just putting a bad taste in everybody's mouth. And then EA just was baking more on the Star Wars brand, overshadowing everything else. That's what I feel like is the case. And with Red Dead and Rockstar, I think everybody gives Rockstar a pass on a lot of this stuff. Or I don't think they really talk about it as much, because it never seems predatory to consumers, especially with all the time that GTA Online has been around and all the content that they've implemented on there and all the stuff that you could buy with real world money. I have yet to see like any articles really complaining about GTA 5 Online or just Grand Theft Auto Online in general, in the way that we've seen it from other places and other games more recently now.
Cool. Yeah. No, very good points all around. So, Gary, do you have any thoughts now?
Yeah, great points made there. And that's a great question as well, by the way. And I want to shout out BG from the Weapon Wheel, because, he actually made some great points, this week about this very topic. And gamers can be hypocrites, because, gamers have turned a blind eye to a lot of, games who have microtransactions directly tied to the gameplay and the online elements, and some of the games that he named are Uncharted, Uncharted 4 and Uncharted 4, and some of these other games, like GTA Online, they have microtransactions that are tied to your progression in the game and the gameplay itself. So sometimes gamers do turn a blind eye. And I feel like with the EA thing, everybody just kind of wanted to have their voice heard. So they kind of, they joined in on bashing EA and everything, even though they kind of overlooked the fact that they've probably bought microtransactions like that themselves, in the past. But yeah, I mean, as for Red Dead Redemption, I feel like they will have some level of microtransactions. I think, in the midst of this news, they might make some changes so that it's not as, it's a bit more subtle, maybe. Maybe it would just be like, hey, you can spend real money to earn coins, and with these coins you can have access to all these other guns if you want to. They probably won't make it be as in your face, as they have done before, or as other games and stuff like that. But they'll probably just make it seem like a side option kind of thing, even though that you're going to log on probably day one, and there's going to be like mad people in the game with the best guns. Somehow they got rocket launchers, even though it's a Western and stuff like that. Like they're going to have crazy weapons and they're going to murder you. So yeah, I think Rockstar will automatically get that pass because they're slick with it. They're a bit more subtle than EA was.
Yeah, Rockstar and Overwatch, Activision Blizzard, the cosmetic stuff. Hey, we'll see. Dana, did you have any other thoughts you wanted to add before we wrap up this topic?
No, just that was previously said. People love to complain, but I bet you that when it's time for release date, people will run and buy it. So. Yeah. People have to speak with their wallets instead of, speaking with your voice is great, but the wallet is what really counts.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree 100%. I'll be very curious to see what comes from all of this. I know the Star Wars thing was a huge deal, and then Disney got involved. That made it even bigger deal. So I'm curious to see what this means for the future of games. But yeah, as you pointed out, Gary, I also saw that video by BG. Yeah, that was an awesome video, and I agree with everything he said as well. Yeah, people will still buy. I know I'm still going to buy all these games coming out next year. I am going to buy a majority of them at some point. I don't know if I'm going to buy them at launch, like I said earlier, but I am going to buy a majority of them. Some one day, one others that's going to have to wait. But if they have microtransactions, it is what it is. I mean, people will have a choice as to whether or not they want to spend that additional money. But yeah, just to know that I'm just very curious to see how all this is handled moving forward. Yeah, but that's it. I think we'll move on to the next topic.
I did have one more question just to bounce off of this one real quick.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, so since we're already talking Star Wars 2 and stuff, yeah, so there was a discussion floating around in the Koalition chat this week, and there's rumors out there that Disney might be considering taking away the license for Star Wars from EA. So obviously that would be a big deal, and that would be a big loss for EA. So I wanted to ask you guys, if that ever happens, which publisher do you think should have the rights to Star Wars?
Very good question. Man, I don't know if I want to be the first to answer that. I have to think about that a little bit more. Do you guys have any thoughts as to who you would want to pick up that license if this happens? Because I don't really know if it's actually going to happen.
I don't think it will happen. I don't think Disney, one, is that petty, and two, I don't think that this has caused that much harm to really have those types of conversations at this point. Like, obviously, again, like we mentioned before, the rumor about the two execs having that phone call about pulling the microtransactions from it, but I don't think it's to the point where they're completely going to back out business with EA at this point. But I mean, if by some whatever reason that actually happened, I would actually say go to a company or go to a publisher that knows how to make flight games. Because granted, there's been a lot of stuff, obviously, with the ground assaults and everything else that's been going on, and a lot of the different types of traditional battles that we've seen from the Star Wars universe. I think that we're severely lacking in a flight game set in the Star Wars universe, like a Rogue Squadron or a TIE Fighter. And I feel like you could go to a couple different people or a couple different publishers and actually be able to create those games while still search out for another publisher, or even work still with EA to create like another Battlefront or another type of Star Wars game. Like, I would love to see them go to the Bandai Namco people to go do something for Star Wars, like Rogue Squadron, or a new reimagining of Rogue Squadron. Because I feel like, Ace Combat is like the type of style of game that I would envision that style. Even though I love the flight controls in Battlefront 2, that's where I could see something kind of like an arcade machine being made like that, or even again a console game being made like that. But that's my shot in the dark. I really don't think it's going to get to that point though.
That's actually a great suggestion. The Star Wars flight game, that would be great, especially if it was like VR as well. That would be incredible.
Yeah, I agree. That is a good one. All right, if I was to make a guess, first and foremost, I do agree with what Mr. Lugo said. I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, I think it would take a couple more mistakes by EA to really, have them lose the license. But if I was to make a guess, this is just a totally random guess as to anyone that I will want to see them pick up this license. There's at least one studio that I know, at least, well, for a while, they didn't really get a lot of shine until not too long ago, a couple of years ago. But if there's one studio that I think I will be very curious to see how they handle the Star Wars license, it would probably be CD Projekt Red. Because they did such a great job with The Witcher, I know they're working on the Cyberpunk game right now. But again, these are franchises that they, some of this stuff has already been established, that they are also trying to do more original stuff. So I'll be curious to see how they would handle something that is being given to them that, it's not necessarily anything that they created, just to see what they would do with that. Could be because I know open world games, they have a good pedigree with the open world stuff with The Witcher. So I'll be curious to see how they would handle something like that. But again, I don't believe that it's going to happen because, again, as I said, EA, they would have to make a lot of mistakes with a lot of more Star Wars games in this particular deal before that license ever, before they ever lose the license. But that's just my opinion. Yeah. How about you, Dana? You have any thoughts? I believe that you did make a comment on this when we had the discussion in the chat.
I do not remember that comment, but I will. I don't know. I think I like your choice the best.
Okay.
Because my something corny would be something that the people who did Disney Infinity, but Avalanche is no longer around. They're now Warner Brothers, and that's definitely not happening.
I think you can still get that style of game, though. Like, that's the thing. I feel like Disney is very open-minded with how they kind of like allow different people to use the Star Wars license. Because, number one, we didn't expect back then when we heard EA was going to get the license to do both Visceral games. I still think you could go to different publishers and still get different types of games. Like, I still believe at some point within the next like couple years we could get a Star Wars RPG. That would be similar to Knights of the Old Republic. I feel like there's still a fan base and an audience there that not only would somebody be able to hear that type of demand, but also somewhere in that company, somebody has to be having those conversations, because I'm pretty sure some of those people are also fans of those style of games, or at least some of the more unorthodox style of Star Wars games, like the Jedi Outcast, like the maybe not the was it the fighting game that was back on PS1, but like you understand what I'm saying, like, you know, away from like the traditional shooter style of game. I feel like, you know, we could still have that happen realistically because Star Wars is such a big brand. But again, right now it's unexpected right now to at least see what could go down. I don't think it's that as bad. Like I said, I don't think it's going to get to that point where EA is going to be dropped out of it to not make Star Wars games anymore.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, very good points all around. I agree. The EA will never lose the license. I mean, they could lose it at some point, but it ain't gonna happen now. I was going to just make a quick comment and say this. I know several years ago. I mean, I can't really tell you exactly when. I know in the past that EA did try to purchase Take-Two to get their hands on Grand Theft Auto. I am so glad that did not happen. I don't want them messing up Grand Theft Auto. And I believe they also tried to purchase Ubisoft also. So I'm glad that they did not were unsuccessful on both of those ventures, because I don't trust them taking control of these other studios and the stuff they're working on. But as for Battlefront, I mean, we'll just have to see what happens with that. But hey, Disney, they can afford to. They could be smart about the decisions that they decide to make. So if they decide that they want to give that license to someone else, I mean, that's on them. But I don't think it's going to happen with EA. We'll just have to see what happens. But okay, any final thoughts on this topic before we move on to the next?
No, I'm good.
All right, Gary. So I'm going to give the floor to you right now, because this was the other part of this discussion you wanted to have regarding video games, and the fact that we have to ask the question of should we be paying more for the games that we currently have. So, Gary, you can start this topic off, where this came from.
Yeah, so an analyst, wrote a report earlier this week that was heavily publicized. And he suggested that the reason we're seeing this level of microtransactions and DLC in video games is because we're not actually paying enough for the video games themselves. So that's why, publishers feel like they have to slap on all these additional costs, for the content and everything, because we're not actually paying enough upfront, considering the games have large budgets and there's, a huge staff of people that need to be paid for their work and everything like that, and they have a lot of upkeep to take care of. So he was suggesting that people should be paying more for video games, and that would possibly cut down on some of the microtransactions and DLC and stuff like that. So I definitely wanted to ask you guys if that's something you agree with, and should we be paying more upfront for our video games?
Very good question. How about Mr. Lugo? You start us off.
Here's the thing. It's a complicated issue because that's been an argument for a while. I mean, for years at this point. Now in this day and age, there's a lot of different places, and people have talked about it before, where we're paying the cheapest technically for games right now. And, you know, technically we should be paying more, especially with all the different types of work and the amount of teams and all this other kind of like other factors that don't really have anything to do with the consumer is kind of like their justification for wanting to pay more than $60, like that $80, $90 or $100 price tag for most games. Now, here's the thing. In some cases, we kind of do, especially with the DLC, the season passes, and the additional stuff that sometimes comes, you know, afterwards or maybe around the release and maybe later on for some of these games. But again, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of this ends up being an optics issue because how are you really going to sell or really get behind a product telling a customer now these days that you have to pay $100 to play our game? And we really believe that. A lot of companies won't get behind that. And the reason being is because when you tell somebody, hey, you got to pay $100 for this product, you have to pay $100 for this gaming experience, and this is what we believe is what you're going to get your money's worth or whatnot. They could just as easily now these days say like, oh, well, that's a lot. You know, you could scare them off and you could cause them to look elsewhere and get involved with another experience that's way cheaper. And that's not even getting into the whole used game market stuff. That's not even getting into the indie scene and everything else that ends up playing a factor into this. Again, it's very complicated. A lot of it has to do with confidence in the company's product. Like, I feel like CD Projekt Red will be that company that'll be like, oh, okay, you guys got to come out and pay $100 for our game. Why? Because we make The Witcher. And The Witcher 4 is going to be amazing. Or Cyberpunk 2099 is going to be phenomenal. And you know you're going to get a phenomenal game, so we're going to charge you $100 for it. Like, I feel like they're a type of company that could get away with something like that. And even maybe to an extent Rockstar, that's a little bit of a stretch. But even then, I feel like those companies won't do it because it kind of scares off the customer a little bit. And it actually puts a bad taste in their mouth before they even get their product in their hands. Because they're going to start coming up with all other types of questions. And that's before other factors. Again, you can even throw in social media into the mix, you know, and have that be part of the conversation and kind of like a negative conversation, which is what you don't want with your product when you put it on the market, especially that first release or that first month that it's out there. So it's a very, very thin line to walk. I mean, you want to be confident and you want to be able to show confidence in your product, and you want to be able to make money, which is what these companies want to do. They want to make money. They have mouths to feed. They have families to support. They have companies to sustain. That's true. But at the same time, you also have to do right by the customer. You have to be able to entice the customer enough where you feel like you're fairly charging them for a quality product. And you're at the same time, you're not going to the point where you're going to make them feel like you're just reaching deep into their their pockets. Even though sometimes we kind of joke a little bit how some companies like EA and other companies are like that with the whole microtransaction stuff. But if we're just talking straight clear cut price tag right off the shelf at any sort of retailer, like a GameStop or anything like that, then I feel like $60, it seems more kind of like the best compromise at this point now these days. Are we paying significantly less than what it usually should be for companies in order to sustain themselves? You know, that could be debated.
Yeah, very good points. I do have 2 points that I want to make, but before I do that, Dana, do you have any thoughts, or do you think that we're paying too little for some of these games, or we should be paying more? I believe you're muted, Dana.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. So
had a difficulty.
No problem. So do you have any? Do you have? Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on that? You think we should be paying more for the games we currently play, or do you think the pricing is right?
You pay enough, and yeah, you pay that flat rate of $60, and then you're paying for season passes and DLC and more content and whatever thing that they want to tag on, you know, a year or two later. So we pay enough as it is. If the thing that would be more interesting would be, should we start paying a flat fee for all of the games, in the sense of we get all the season passes, all of the tie-ins, all of DLC whenever, and we just pay a flat rate for that. But then again, you have to also question, are all games equal of that, you know, that same price. If you have, say, Battlefront 2 and you have all of that content, and then you have, say, Sonic Forces, you're going to feel like you're being cheapened out of the money that you spent with Battlefront 2 than Sonic Forces. So I think that the price what we're paying right now is good. And I think that it gives us an option of whether or not we even want that extra content. Sometimes we get that extra content and it's complete crap. So I like it how it is right now.
Hey, that's a good question. Yeah, I'm gonna say that's a good response. So I have two things that I want to mention real quick. I don't know if this is going to branch off into another part of this discussion, but regarding the pricing structure, yeah, I do feel the point that was made, that Dana made, right on the money about, you know, the value of the game, you know, because I could tell you there's a lot of games that I played in the past where I would tell you this game is not worth the $60 price in my mindset. Take, for example, Titanfall. When I reviewed the original Titanfall game, and this is a game, there is no single-player campaign, it's just straight-up multiplayer. It's fine, but a lot of these games doesn't really feel like it's a lot of content, and this is a game where I could tell you it's a fun game, it was a great game to play, but would I have paid full price for it? Absolutely not. Because to me, it didn't really think that the value wasn't there. Now, fast forward to the present time, and I've been playing a game called Cuphead. You know, a game that it has so much content, the game is only $20. And I'm like, now that's an instance where I definitely would have paid more for that game because it felt like, you know, you could tell all the time that was spent creating the game. It makes sense. But again, you know, in some cases, again, you know, the pricing structure is different. I don't have a problem with the $60 price. I can say that there definitely are some games that you definitely deserve more money, but it is something that could definitely be debated because, you know, there are some instances where that may not necessarily be true, so on and so forth. One thing that I did want to bring up, and this is, I think it's still on topic to some degree. I had a discussion with my friend last night because I actually visited him. And he was playing Mario on the Switch. And we had a quick discussion about, you know, the fact that the cartridges, you know, Nintendo has made it very clear that for the cartridges, they would charge a little bit more because of the fact that you have the physical copy of the game. Well, the question I have is, why is the digital the same price as the physical? Because, you know, $60, I mean, you're downloading the game. You don't have the cartridge, so I don't understand why you're paying the same price. But I mean, that's something that I don't have an answer for. I just think it's a little interesting. But overall, some games, I think they definitely, maybe the $60 can be seen as is too low of a price because depending on what the actual game is, I mean, that's up for debate. But as of right now, I don't have a problem with the price that we are paying for some of these games because some of the games, you know, if it doesn't have a lot of content in it, or if it's an unfinished game, and if we go right back to Battlefront 2, you know, I did hear that the content that they are releasing is actually more story content. So I didn't play the campaign, and Mr. Lugo, maybe you can answer this question, but is the campaign complete when you actually finish it, or does it feel like there's more?
Hell no. Like, I could answer that real quickly. It ends on a cliffhanger, and I even said that in my review. One of my biggest issues and what should have been one of the biggest pulls for Battlefront 2, since it was the biggest piece of criticism that we had about the first Battlefront, should have been the campaign, and it feels like an incomplete campaign because of the extra DLC, the content coming afterwards, but also there's a lot of other issues that just pop up throughout it. And even then, I have to say this, and I didn't really talk about it in my review because it wasn't really kind of like part of the review itself. As a Star Wars fan, there's a lot of confusing stuff that happens. And again, I'm not going to get into too much spoilers, but that adds on a whole bunch of other problems and other issues that people, once they figure out and once they kind of like really kind of get away from everything else and really take a hard look at it, is going to cause some other problems and discussions that are going to pop up.
Yeah, hey, I believe that. But yeah, that's the whole point is, you know, some of the games, you know, they're not technically finished. You're still getting content that's being added in later. And that was another issue with Titanfall. You know, there was plenty of stuff that wasn't in the original game that they added after the fact. And that made me think to myself, why didn't you just add all this other stuff and then release the game when it was done? But obviously, you know, it was about, well, we got to get this stuff out. We got to get this game out immediately. You know, EA was in charge at that point of that. So they said, get this game out immediately. And a lot of these higher ups, the executives, so on and so forth, the people that make these decisions, they say, we got to get the game out immediately. I know Gary, Mass Effect Andromeda, that's a game where he could say, yeah, they probably should have released that later when everything was up to snuff. But again, just these decisions that were made. So I don't know. But go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, you're completely right. You know, what you guys said is completely correct. Because that's one of my concerns. Like, say it gets to a point where we have to start paying, you know, $80 to $100 for a video game. There's a few concerns I would have with that, because like you guys highlighted, we pay $60 right now, and a lot of the games aren't even worth that, you know, with what we get. So I don't think paying more for a video game would necessarily mean that the games get better or we get more content from them, because, you know, once that threshold does go up and we're paying more, like, you got to remember that, you know, these publishers, you know, they're some of them are corporations, and, you know, in business, it's always a priority to make sure that you're spending, you know, the least amount of money possible and making the most amount possible. So just because we the consumer are paying more, it doesn't mean that they're going to make the moves to, you know, in like make anything better. They're probably just going to, you know, make the same thing they're already making with, you know, the $60 games. And then, you know, we'll just be paying more for it, so they'll be making more money. But yeah, like, that's a legit concern. Like, I don't think anything would actually get better, and I think the companies would actually get a bit too comfortable with, you know, making that much money, and we'd probably still get DLC as well. Anyway, you know, they'd probably still be doing these other things to manipulate us further and get more money out of us, even though we're already paying more anyway. And, you know, at least with DLC and loot boxes, you know, although they have been manipulating the loot box system a lot in games these days, at least there's a choice there, you know. So you can buy a game for $60, and then it's your choice if you actually want to spend more money on it, you know, if you actually want to give them more money. So you have a chance to actually play the game and experience it and decide whether you actually want to put more money into it or not. So obviously, if you love the game, you're probably going to want to, you know, buy the DLC to happen, you know, whether it's to see what happens next in the story, or just because you want to support the, you know, the developer, which I sometimes do with a lot of indie games or MMOs and stuff like that. Like, sometimes I'll just, you know, like Guild Wars 2, for example, I bought so one time I bought gems in the game just because, you know, I'd been playing it for like 100 hours or something. And, you know, I just wanted to kind of give a thank you to the developers, you know, ArenaNet. So, you know, I just bought gems in the game for no reason at all, just because I felt that they deserved it for providing all that content. And they're such a small team and stuff. So it should always be a choice. Like, I think as consumers, we'll be more appreciative if, you know, we do have that choice, and if the game is actually good quality and we enjoy it, you know, and we're passionate about it, you know. I think at that point there's usually nothing wrong with us wanting to pay more for more content because we love it so much. So yeah, like, they should be letting us decide that, because we do have to abide by a filtering process, you know, as consumers, like, because not every game is worth it. So that's another thing that would happen as well. Like, you would have to be a lot more selective about the games you do buy if the price went up. And I feel like people would be buying games much less overall because of that. So that's another issue that would arise in the industry. Like, video game sales might go down if they put the price up like that, because people would buy less games, like, because they would probably only wait for, you know, the few games that they're really looking forward to, and they probably wouldn't take any chances with games that, you know, that are getting a lot of publicity, or, you know, are being talked about, or games that they're not that familiar with. You know, they probably wouldn't take a chance with it, because you know, it's so expensive. So they would just stick to what they know and stick to, you know, maybe some online games that they can continue to grind. And yeah, I think sales overall would go down. So yeah, those are a few of my concerns on what would happen if the price went up. I think 60 is a good amount for a consumer to pay. I think that's fair, considering what we've been getting.
Good points. Yeah, very good points all around. So, any final comments to make before we move on to the next topic? Okay, so the next topic we're going to discuss is this is one that I must admit, you know, when I heard the news about this and to know that it's going down very soon, makes me very concerned for how this is going to impact us. Well, it impacts everybody, but also to impact gamers especially, and that is net neutrality. So, Gary, I believe that you have something you wanted to say just to give people an idea of exactly what this is if they haven't heard about it. But I'm pretty sure if you've been watching the news, you know exactly what we're talking about. So, Gary, please feel free to share your insight as to what this is exactly and how it can impact gamers.
Yeah, so a lot of the cable companies and I guess, you know, the governing bodies, you know, in the States and everything, they want to kind of push this anti-net neutrality, you know, bill. And the aim is to put power back into the hands of the cable companies and stuff like that and the internet service providers, so that they would have control over, you know, the content that you have access to, you know, with your internet and everything. So they can restrict websites. They can, you know, they can throttle services like Netflix so that, you know, you can't access them without paying a little extra. Like you would have to probably pay the cable company more if you want to access these services. And then on the back end, you know, companies like Netflix would probably have to pay the cable companies as well so that their service would even be available, you know. And this trickles down to gaming too, because they could do the very same thing with your online gaming, you know, your Xbox Live or PSN or, you know, the Nintendo Switch service and everything. Like they can restrict that if they wanted to. And, you know, that's a big problem because we should, like, you know, everyone should have the freedom to use the services that they want to online. As long as you're not doing anything illegal, then, you know, you should be able to, you know, access these things. And I think it's wrong. It's completely wrong to block access to websites and stuff like that. And we know that the cable companies are mad because services like Netflix and, you know, I forgot the name of the other one, but yeah, companies like Netflix are taking away money from them because they're giving us all this content that we legit want to see. And more people are thinking, you know what, why am I paying for cable? Like, why am I paying for these channels? You know, like I should just watch stuff on Netflix and Hulu and Amazon and, you know, all these different services. So the cable companies are salty like that because of that. And, you know, they want to take control of the internet and, you know, restrict what you actually have access to unless you pay them. So this is their way of, you know, taking control back and making sure that, you know, more people will then, you know, be watching cable instead. So yeah, this affects a lot of gamers because not only can they restrict gaming access, but also, you know, a lot of gamers are nerds like us and we're into stuff like Netflix and, you know, Hulu and Amazon, and, you know, we're into, you know, the more kind of indie content, if you will, and independent content services and stuff like that. And yeah, I think whenever you have a government or, you know, organizations like that who are in control of what you see on the internet, I think that's a bad thing anyway, because everyone should have access to, you know, the things that, you know, they need to know. And like, you should have access to knowledge even, you know, like, and if they're going to go out of their way to restrict websites and stuff like that, I think that's a very bad thing for the education of humanity. You know, like people should have access to whatever they need, you know, as long as it's not illegal, like I said. But yeah, very big issue. I'm sure Dana and JJ also have some thoughts on it as well. But there is a website that you guys can go to in the US. It's called battleforthenet.com. So you can go there, and it has a form where you can type in, you know, what state you're in and everything like that, and it will send like a letter or email or something to, you know, your local governing body, you know, in each state. And then, you know, you can try and fight this bill going through. So I think everyone should do that, you know, take the time to do that, because this is something that's going to affect all of us, you know, even the coalition. This could affect the coalition. So, yeah.
I agree. Let me just make a quick comment, and then I'm going to get JJ's opinion. I sense that Comcast knows that we were having this discussion, because while you were talking, literally, I started having issues with my internet. So now everything is fine, but I don't know what the hell is going on. Mr. Lugo, do you have any thoughts?
I mean, Gary pretty much summed it up pretty well, but here's the thing. There's many parts to this, and it's been an ongoing thing that's been happening for, I want to say, the last couple of years, because there's been stuff in the news that I remember reading about. One of the big problems with this and why net neutrality is so important is because technically the cable companies or the ISPs could hold businesses hostage. And the way they do that is that they'll be able to slow down and speed up certain businesses based on preference, usually based on if a company pays a premium. So a lot of the smaller startup companies, a lot of the companies like even the Koalition, you know, as a smaller media outlet compared to other outlets out there, or even just companies that just want to use the internet and use a website to sell off their products, because they can only pay so much, and because they're not like multi-million-dollar companies out there, they'll kind of get stuck in the mud, you know, with lackluster internet speeds or just lackluster connections. And it creates this disparage, this inequality amongst people online, you know, from surfing the internet, from being able to exchange information and all this different type of stuff. So that's the real issue here. It gets a little bit more complicated with the way that it's explained in a number of different sources, including the website that Gary talked about, was it battleforthenet.com? Basically, where the legislation that's being pushed right now is to change the internet as a utility from, I believe it's a tier 3 to a tier 2, which would make it so that way the government doesn't have the ability to stop companies from doing that sort of things, to stop them from actually regulating the speeds at which people are able to connect to the internet, or more specifically for businesses. That it really affects businesses out there a lot, you know, in places for specifically kind of like Netflix, you know, because that was the big example used before. But for the common person, this would be the first step towards something even worse, which would be not only just the inequality in internet connections, which you'll have to pay more if stuff like this goes down, which looks like it's going to, but also this is the first steps towards companies or ISPs blocking out specific websites from you looking at them at all. So it's not just like the bad stuff, or not stuff like porn, or not stuff like, you know, things that you would expect, you know, people to kind of raise an eyebrow at. But like even just their competition, you know, other websites like AT&T and Comcast, even though they're not really in competition like that, they're kind of in cahoots and kind of like a pseudo monopoly, not monopoly. And the same thing also for any other types of like better alternatives. So imagine, okay, Google Fiber, right? Google Fiber, people have been trying to push for that to get posted around the United States all over the place, including out in California, which is where they're really pushing that. Imagine not being able to see any information about that, or be able to visit their website if you live on the East Coast, because it's pretty much dominated by Comcast, and they don't want their competition being spread around or giving people alternatives, because they obviously want you to stay more with Comcast, or they want you to depend on them. It's kind of like that now to an extent, without the censorship, or without really the companies being able to do something as crazy as like that. But, you know, it's still primarily dominated over here on the East Coast by places like Comcast, Xfinity, etc. But overall, as far as gaming is concerned, Gary and Rich are right. It is going to affect our ability to play games online, which adds a whole nother layer of problems on top of what we already have now at this point. The United States is kind of behind a lot of countries, specifically Japan and in places in Europe, with the quality of internet connection that they have out there. Not just because it's a smaller country, Japan specifically, but also in the way that they built their lines. I believe it's in Japan, the government has control of like how the internet connections are built. how the internet and the power lines and stuff like that are built, as well as also being able to make it readily available to the general public. So you could like walk around Tokyo and get free internet, free Wi-Fi that's regulated by the federal government. That allows you just to freely just get connected to it. And there's no like crazy restrictions like what we were mentioning before. We don't really have that here in the United States. We only have like certain places, like in certain cities, that offer something like that and offer it in such like a free open basis like that. But this type of stuff that what they're pushing now would totally kill that. That would kill any sort of possibility like that whatsoever. And it's a shame because a lot of this is mostly due to agendas that don't have the people's best interest in mind. It's really about not only people that are already rich and already controlling a large sum of money getting even more richer, but also trying to push out everybody else in order to keep them in a position that they're comfortable with. And that sucks. We see a lot of that in politics now, but with something like this, that it's going to really affect everybody, especially YouTube. Imagine if any of these companies get really pissed off at YouTube, you know, because of like the whole piracy thing and a lot of the other political stances and political opinions that are being thrown out there in places like YouTube and other social media. Imagine all of a sudden that they start slowing down YouTube. Or imagine if they start making it much more difficult for people to access YouTube, to access Twitter, to access Instagram, to access Facebook, you know, because of varying different opinions and other stuff that has nothing to do with really what's at the heart of the issue. That would suck. And that's what we're starting to see, at least the first rumblings about. I think this is only going to get worse too. Like I'm a little bit more of the pessimist when it comes to a lot of these type of topics when we talk about it. But I feel like this is going to be something that next year, if not in 2019, we're also going to see get worse before it gets any better. If it gets any better in the first place, I feel like a lot of people need to talk about it more. We need to have a lot more YouTubers, even though we have a lot of YouTubers and content creators that are speaking out about this. We need to have even more people. We have to have people a lot more aggressively talking about it and putting it out there so people take action and stop talking about it. If you understand what I'm saying, you know, it's one thing to talk about, it's one thing to make people aware about stuff, but you got to encourage people to take more action. You got to take action yourself. You got to guide people sometimes into taking action in order to make some real change happen.
I agree, 100%, absolutely. Dana, you have any thoughts on net neutrality?
I think it's very unfortunate, but I think that, you know, we're going to start slowly losing rights anyway. So sorry to be the Debbie Downer.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Wait,
I do
elaborate
agree.
on that.
Well, go ahead.
What do you mean? It's going to pass, and we're going to just, you know, have to suffer with it.
Man, I hope not.
Well, I'm like 90% sure.
Yeah, they said December 7th, it will get signed. So, yeah, I'm very curious to see what happens as a result of this. I mean, I agree with pretty much everything that all three of you have already said. So I don't really have too much more to add to it. Just it's important that we definitely spread the word. As Gary said, the website battleforthenet.com. We'll leave a link in the actual post for this as well. But definitely should voice your opinion, voice your concerns. And, you know, we definitely have to be prepared for what could happen. But I do believe it will pass, as Dana said. I mean, I have no doubt about that. So you just have to prepare. You know, it's very much similar to what happened with the election. We have to live with that now. You know, a lot of people may disagree. Pretty sure a lot of people disagree with what happened with that. But listen, we have to live with it now. It's done. It's in the past. Just have to see what happens moving forward in the future and be prepared for whatever happens as a result of these decisions that were made. So, hopefully, I will say, hopefully all this stuff makes people wake up and more aware to their surroundings. That's the most important thing that you should take away from all of this. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, so I want to say this as well. I want to ask this question specifically to Dana. But you guys, you know, also answer as well. But we know that, you know, this is gonna impact Netflix heavy, you know, not just Netflix, but a lot of, you know, distribution platforms, you know, and content platforms and stuff like that. But, you know, this in combination with Disney setting up their own streaming service now, and, you know, Disney already does, like, they do a lot with the media. They own ESPN, so they have a lot of power already. So do you think that, you know, Netflix is going to be able to sustain themselves, you know, with Disney entering the streaming game and with this whole, you know, anti-net neutrality bill coming along?
No. Just if you take away all of the Disney and Marvel content alone, aside from like say Black Mirror, what else do you really have? Not that much. So no, it's unfortunate. And even if the whole net neutrality thing was to work out for the best, they don't really have that content that people are running to. It's usually all of the Marvel shows, which they won't have, or House of Cards, which we all know that debacle. So not really.
Man, Kevin Spacey messed up everything.
Kevin Spacey, it's all Kevin Spacey and Harvey Weinstein fault. It's his fault, Harvey Weinstein.
Well, in all honesty, I mean, I think there's a little bit more there that's offered by Netflix that people that just doesn't get a lot of shine, because I think that people focus on really what's the trending thing like right now, between the Marvel shows, the House of Cards stuff, obviously Stranger Things, and you get those shows that are really the pull towards Netflix as a service like that. But I still think that there's still more that's offered there besides the documentaries, besides the other original series that they have on there, some of which doesn't get a lot of shine because maybe it's not up to the same quality, as well as also just the ease of use of the offering of the shows and the movies that they have on there that's readily available for people, a little bit more better so than a lot of the other services, including Hulu, including Amazon Prime Video, including even YouTube to an extent. There's still some value there. I just feel like, again, Netflix and a couple other companies are going to get the brunt of this, or at least going to be kind of thrust into the spotlight and almost be a little bit kind of like the punching bag for when this stuff starts to go down, because they're so popular. And if it's obviously going to make an impact with a lot of people when those types of services are affected. I think it's going to get even worse when you start seeing places like other social media like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Periscope start to get affected, especially when things start to become a little bit more politically charged at some point. I think that's when this stuff is really going to get bad. I mean, we've already got some of that now. Not to get too much into politics, as you guys know, I don't really like talking politics all that much, but I feel like that's when things get at its worst because of again, people wanting to push one way or another, whether it's for an agenda, whether it's for a result, an outcome, or just for the sake of being right or being on the right side. That's when I feel like things will get really bad with all this.
I agree. One comment that I want to make also, I believe that as we have seen in business and pretty much throughout history, any company that goes through certain things, they have to pivot and make a change. So obviously, yeah, as you all mentioned, Netflix would be impacted by this heavily. I think that the fact that Netflix is offered on so many platforms and the fact that it has a lot of different content, I mean, they obviously will have to come up with other shows that they can put out there. We know that they're capable of doing that because they got, like I said, Stranger Things is on there. House of Cards, yeah, it's over. That's finished, done. They can have spinoffs from it, and maybe that will still gain some type of popularity, but pretty much they have to pivot and think of other different shows to have. But what I'm saying is because they are on so many platforms, on so many devices, I'm pretty sure that they will still have an audience. They just have to figure out how to keep that audience engaged and how to keep the service going amidst all these changes. Pretty much everybody's going to have to do that when these things happen. Massive changes like this, you have to think to yourself, well, how can I change and still add value to my audience and get my product out there? So everybody's going to have to think about these things. But Netflix, I think they'll still be okay depending on how the decisions that they make moving forward. Now, Stranger Things is still a very popular show. We already know that they're going to have another season of that. So that's one thing you can say that's great. They still have these other deals with these other shows that, the show may be right now on TV, the current season, but you still have access to the other seasons prior to that. So, I mean, it depends. It depends. But yeah, they will be impacted when Disney decides to do its own thing. But at the other end of that, Disney, I think, would also be impacted as well and face their own challenges with all this stuff that once it goes down. I mean, it's going to impact everybody. So it's all a matter of what are these companies going to do to try and make the situation still work in their favor? And we'll have to see how all that pans out. But no doubt about it, when the bill does get passed, you know, because I mean, the current plan for the administration is to undo everything that was done by the previous president. So it's going to happen. And as JJ said, you know, I don't like talking about politics that much either, but I'm very curious to see what happens as a result of all of this. But we don't really know right now. We just have to wait and see. But that's all I was going to say on the matter. I don't know if Gary, you had anything else you was going to add or say.
Not too much really, but you know, I just want to say, like, you know, I want to be the ultimate pessimist and be like, you know, last year we had Brexit, we had Trump, and now this year it looks like, you know, we're gonna have this, you know, like we're gonna have people controlling our internet access, and it's very unfortunate. So I would just urge everyone in the US to, you know, visit that website, battleforthenet.com, and just do what you can to make sure that, you know, this doesn't get passed.
That I agree 100% with what you said, and to add on to that, I also would encourage anyone out there, if you feel as though you're trying to be restricted from doing anything, know that what power you do have, you still do have some power in some of the things that you do. So I would definitely encourage you to take the action to still be inspired to do what you want to do. Don't let anyone tell you you can't do anything. If you have something you want to achieve, a dream you want to go after, still go after it. Don't let anyone try to restrict you and tell you you can't do it, because you have to be able to think beyond that and look at the bigger picture. So that is the advice that I would give. But yeah, as Gary said, definitely check out the website once again, battleforthenet.com. Sign the petition, and again, be prepared for the changes that we will experience, because we're going to experience a lot more changes. This is only really the first year that this stuff has started with the new person in office. So be prepared for what other stuff we have to deal with. It is what it is. But don't let that. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Also educate yourself, because a lot of people still don't know what net neutrality is.
Mm-hmm. Agree. 100%. Definitely educate yourself. And as I said, know the changes are coming, but know that you can still do your part to achieve the goals you want to in this life. Don't let anyone deter you from doing what you want to do. That's the main thing here. So just wanted to talk about that. So if there's no other thoughts on that topic, we can get back to gaming. More importantly, Black Friday stuff that went down this past this last couple of days. So here's the thing. I don't really know how valid this is. We're gonna have a discussion about it right now. But obviously, there was a few news stories that came out on Friday, and I believe a few on Saturday as well. Basically talking about the Black Friday sales and the fact that the PlayStation 4 Slim, which a lot of us already know, the system was on sale for Black Friday for $199. There was also a sale of the Xbox One S. I believe that was $189, somewhere around that ballpark. But the thing is that the PlayStation 4 Slim has been selling out everywhere. I don't know if this is true for the stores in you guys' area, but I know here it was impossible to find a PlayStation 4 Slim because of that price. So Gary wanted us to have a discussion on whether or not we think the PlayStation 4 actually has a chance of outselling the Switch this month. Now, keep in mind, Black Friday is only on Friday, even though some of these sales started throughout this week. I know GameStop had their promotion was Sony Week. That started on Monday and ran all through this week, and I believe it ends today or tomorrow. But the question is, once again, that wanted to be posed is, do we think the PlayStation 4 hardware has a chance of outselling the Switch for this month? Gary, I'll let you answer that question first, and your own opinion on it.
I didn't do, too much digging on, any of just how much it was selling, but, I did hear the headlines pop up and everything about the PS4 selling I'm not sure if it was the Slim the main one that was selling, or was the Pro selling as well?
The Pro sold. I mean, the Pro had about a $50 discount. That actually was selling, I believe, on Amazon. It was selling out on Amazon at certain points, but the Slim, hands down, was the better deal. And even with GameStop, they actually had a deal where if you bought a PlayStation 4 Slim, you also got a $50 GameStop card as well. But that was only like on Black Friday for a couple of hours. But
Okay.
yeah, it's doing well, I would say.
Okay, well, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's it's going to be interesting to see, because obviously that's, like you said, that's contained to that one day. And of course, for some retailers it was like all week or whatever, but Black Friday is just one period, and then you still have the whole month. So it really does depend on how well the Switch has sold all throughout the month consistently. Now we know that Mario just came out, last month. I think was it October it came out? Yeah,
October 27th.
Okay, yeah, so that game's been out, about a month now. So people are probably still going to be picking up Switches just for that game alone, and to play some of the other stuff that came out as well. But I know a lot of people in particular were waiting for Mario to release before they picked up a Switch. So there could have been a ton of sales of the Switch around Black Friday, like the 2 weeks prior and everything in November. So I think it's going to be a tough fight. I think it's going to be neck and neck, kind of. I think Sony definitely does have a good chance at outselling them this month, with all those sales. But I don't know. I think just because Mario came out, I think Nintendo might possibly edge it a little bit. But it's going to be interesting to see. It's definitely going to be a close one. But I can confirm that the Xbox One X won't outsell either.
You're gonna make some people mad. That last comment. We'll see. We'll see what happens with Microsoft. Mr. Lugo, do you have any thoughts on this topic?
Not really. I mean, we'll see what goes down after the holidays, or at least after Christmas and stuff like that, see what went down. Because I mean, at this point, eventually PlayStation 4 sales are going to slow down, or PlayStation 4 Pro sales are going to slow down, because there's going to be enough people that have it already in the world. Same thing also for the Nintendo Switch, but I think the Nintendo Switch got a lot more heat now at this point, because more and more people are starting to pick it up, especially with all the good releases that are starting to come up consistently. So we'll know as we go into 2018. Let's find out what's up.
I agree with that. Other point that I would add is just that, yeah, I mean, the Switch is the hot item now. I mean, when I went to Best Buy, because I actually went to the store Black Friday and then the day after, because I wanted to see how bad it was going to be. I saw, Nintendo has done a really great job, because Switches were all over the place, so they definitely got the stocks shortage issue resolved. I didn't see any Xbox One X's. I did see plenty of S's, but no PlayStation 4. So, as you guys already alluded to, yeah, we'll have to wait and see how the numbers pan out. I think with PlayStation 4, definitely Black Friday, they did well with that. But for the whole month, who knows? And as you said, Gary, yeah, Mario came out October 27th. We already saw the NPDs last month is that, I mean, it still did sell well for October. I mean, it was in the top 3. So I do expect Mario to still be in the top 3, but Call of Duty definitely will be number 1, I feel like, because that is the game that, that was out at the beginning of this month, and it's been doing very well. But we'll have to wait and see how the numbers pan out. But Dana, what are your thoughts? Do you think the PlayStation 4, because of the sales, potentially outsold the Switch this month, or you think no chance in hell?
Well, remember, Cyber Monday still exists, so I'm looking forward to that. But I do think that it will outsell. One, because right now Mario Odyssey is just such a well-reviewed game, and not everyone has it yet. So people are waiting for the holiday season. If not, Black Friday, there's always Cyber Monday. Then we have the other sales that's coming around all throughout Christmas. So as was previously said, we're not going to get a official number until, you know, maybe January after New Year. So right now, to me, it looks like that it's going to outsell the PS4.
Good points. Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. That's it in a nutshell. Definitely does look that way. We'll have to see what happens, but I definitely did want to give a congratulations to Nintendo. The fact that the console is doing so well, as I've said on this show many times. A lot of people were skeptical. I know I was skeptical from that launch, but you know, Nintendo, they definitely did a good job. Now we're going to see what happens with the Xbox One X, which again, the future looks bright for Microsoft. So I have no complaints. And of course, with PlayStation, they've been doing a great job this year. They have a lot of great titles coming out next year. So just a great time for gaming in general, regardless of what system you have. But yeah, I'll be curious to see the numbers for next month. What's the top selling software in the hardware? So looking forward to that. So any other thoughts or other topics you guys wanted to bring up before we get ready to wrap up the show?
No, that's pretty much it. You guys, you know, nailed it on the head. You said everything out. I'm waiting to say.
All right, cool. So as I mentioned before, wasn't really too many news topics this week because, you know, because of the holidays, so on and so forth. Definitely want to encourage you guys to join our show next week. We're probably going to, if I had to make a guess, we'll talk about a lot of different other things. We're definitely going to at some point talk about what we think is going to go down at the Game Awards, because there's going to be some reveals at that show. We're going to definitely talk about that on a future podcast closer to the show. But that pretty much wraps up our show for this week. Thank you all for listening. And for final shout outs, do you guys have any final shout outs that you would like to give? How about you start us off, Mr. Lugo?
Yeah, I have a couple. So obviously, shout out to everybody listening to the show now, whether you're catching the live show or if you're catching the replay afterwards on demand. Thank you guys. We appreciate all the support. We appreciate all the feedback and all the type of interaction that you guys have with us on YouTube, on the website, on social media, etc. Big shout out to HyperX, because we actually have a new unboxing and impressions video that we got up on the website now that I did recently in the last few days. Definitely got to check that out. It's for the HyperX Cloud Stinger. This is the first time we actually got a chance to check out some HyperX products like that, or really kind of take a dive into it. So we're hoping at some point to be able to do the same thing down the line as well. So also with a couple other companies that we're in the works with, trying to talk with. Also, big news, and I announced this on Twitter, and we have to talk about this because this is happening actually tomorrow. I'm actually going to have a very special guest on TK Spotlight. Now, we're going on my 10th episode now that we're doing for the show. And the big guest that we're going to have that I announced on Twitter, to reiterate, is James Rolfe, who's also known as the Angry Video Game Nerd. Now, this is a big deal because obviously James is a big influence on a lot of content creators out there. He's been in the game for a while, since 2006. I want to say, you know, if I got my dates right. So he's been around for a good minute. But basically, he's going to be on the show. We're going to talk about everything. We're going to talk about the Angry Video Game Nerd. We're going to talk about Cinemassacre. We're going to talk about Board James. We're going to talk about retro gaming. We're going to talk about gaming now. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff. And one of the things that I wanted to do for this episode, since this is episode X, as we're calling it, I wanted to get some more questions and comments from the audience, from the viewers and the listeners, that I could ask James when we do the episode tomorrow. We're actually going to be doing it in the afternoon, Eastern Standard Time. So if you guys want to, in the comments here on this video, on the live show, or hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag TK Spotlight, send me questions. Send us questions that we could ask James while we actually talk, because it's going to be pretty interesting. It's going to be a lot of fun. Besides him, though, which is the big news, we also have a couple other special guests that I can't reveal just yet, but they're going to be very, very special guests, very big ones that we're getting on the show that we're going to be able to talk with, that you guys are definitely going to enjoy, and I can't wait to share with you. But other than that, thank you, everybody, for checking out our content, and I hope to have some more surprises for you guys very soon.
Absolutely, and I'm going to echo what JJ said. Definitely send us questions. I've already received a few questions, but we definitely need some more. So feel free to send us questions, whether it is as leaving a comment to this video, the post on the website, or just, you know, on Twitter. Yeah, we'll make sure that you definitely contact us and let us know any questions that you might have. But yeah, looking forward to that. Dana, do you have any shout outs that you would like to give?
Shout out to everybody listening. And also, I wasn't get a chance to say, shout out to Mass Effect, which just celebrated its 10th year anniversary. 10 years since the first game came out. We're all old. Yay.
Yes.
Yeah, you just dated everybody on this panel.
Yeah. And let me add on to that, yeah, 10 years since the game came out, and it will be another 10 years before we need to see another Mass Effect, because EA they did a horrible job with Andromeda. So
that was cold-blooded.
Yeah, that was savage, Rich. Come on, son.
They're the ones that said they're gonna take a break, so it is what it is. All right. So yeah, I'd like to give a shout out to everybody on the panel, Mr. Lugo, Dana, Gary. Give a shout out to all of the fans that continue to show us support. I saw Reggie in the chat. I saw Mark in the chat. I saw Black Star in the chat. Thank you guys for your continued support. Definitely want to give a shout out to the Patreon subscribers, which Gary will also give a shout out to momentarily. And just let you guys know to stay tuned to the site. We do have a lot of exciting things coming to the site for this week and the rest of the year. I'm already making plans for 2018. That's a big year for us. So I'll talk more about that in the future. But thank you all for your continued support. Oh, yeah. Quick shout out to Mr. Max Muller. He was unable to be with us this week. We hope he had a great Thanksgiving. We'll look forward to having him on next time. And Mr. Tony Polanco as well in the Throwdown. That'll be on later tonight. So make sure you check out their show as well. And Gary, the floor is yours.
Yep. So as always, we're going to shout out our Patreon supporters. So shouts to M. Collins, Sean Gority, Stephen Ferron, Mauricio Aguilar, Himdil, Fergus Mills, Lelo and Leslie, Nicholas Alvarez, Miguel, and Mark. Big shouts to all of you guys. We appreciate you. And yeah, definitely look out for more content from us soon. I want to shout out Reggie and Mark for being in the chat. And shouts to Illustrated DEO for just joining the show now. Better late than never. Be sure to catch the rebroadcast, like, after, if you guys missed the live stream. But yeah, shouts to all of you guys for being a part of the show, and shouts to the whole Koalition team. But that's pretty much it from me.
Absolutely. And last but certainly not least, if you haven't had a chance to check out our Punisher recap show, definitely check that out. Now, I will say it is a spoiler-filled show. It is on the website right now, so definitely check it out. But if you haven't watched Punisher yet, you definitely need to watch Punisher before you check out the show. That's a warning, but you should already know that, because I said it's a spoiler-free review. So, but that's it for today. We hope that you all have a great week, and we will talk to you all next week.